Hi, I just want to share a couple of quick thoughts with you about fishing a plastic worm, or actually how to rig a plastic worm. Probably been more bass caught on a plastic worm maybe than all other lures combined, frankly. And by far and away, the most popular way of rigging it is called a Texas rig. Some people call it a slip sinker rig or a weedless rig, but more times than not, you'll hear it referred to as a Texas rig. It's very simple to do, and it's a very powerful rig, and I'll tell you why. Because it makes this worm, this plastic worm, weedless. So you can throw it in the thickest, heaviest, brush, trees, fallen logs, whatever. You can throw it right in the thickest stuff, and you can work that plastic worm through that thickest stuff. And obviously, if you can do that, it gives you a shot at not only catching more fish, but it gives you a shot at catching some of the biggest fish. So we want to know how to rig this weedlessly so we can go out and do that. It starts with a slip sinker. Some people refer to it as a bullet sinker because it is in fact shaped. I don't know if you can see that. It's shaped like a bullet. Okay, and they come in various weights. They start at like 1/8 of an ounce and they go on up to 2 ounces and maybe even more. But for you and I, most of the time we're looking at fishing something like a 1/4 ounce up to maybe a 3/8 ounce. Rarely do I go to a 1/2 ounce or bigger. I do, but it's rare. A general rule of thumb that I would share with you is this. You want to fish the lightest weight that you can get by with. So for me, generally speaking, from 8 foot or 10 feet of water or less, I'm throwing a 1/4 ounce most of the time. As I go deeper, I'm going to add more weight. As I increase the worm size, I'm going to increase the weight as well. But most of the time, my go-to weight, 80% of the time, is a 1/4 ounce weight. Now you thread that on, and you put it on the nose point first. So in other words, the nose of the bullet weight is going towards your rod tip, and then you tie a hook. Now hooks they come in all different shapes and sizes. If you have a 2, 3, 4, or 5/0 hook, that's enough. Depending on the size of the worms, that's going to dictate the size of the hook. More times than not, a 3 or 4/0's probably going to do everything you're going to want to do. But if you go to a really big worm, like an 8-inch or 10-inch worm, you might want to go to a 5/0. But more times than not, 3 or 4/0 is going to be all you're going to need to do. All these hooks are different, but what's important about them is you need a hook that will hold the worm on there so it won't come off when you cast and it won't come off when you work the brush pile. This one, for example, has offsetting barbs. You probably can't see it on the video, but there's a barb up here and a barb over here at the top, and that helps hold on the worm. This one is offset, comes down, goes out and around like this. Okay, that little offset allows that worm to slide on there and, again, not come off. My preference on worms nowadays, I've kind of gone from the straight shank, which I've always preferred for years. They got these kind that actually rotate. It looks straight, probably looks straight on the camera, but it's not. If you were looking at it up close, the shank goes down, curves around, and comes back up to the tip. And that curve is important because when you set the hook, that hook will rotate out of that plastic worm and into the fish's upper jaw. It's a perfect design, in my opinion, for a worm hook. Now, how do you thread it on? Very simple, but very important. Number one, you start in the center of the worm with the point of the hook. You come down, depending on the size of the hook, but generally speaking, about 1/8 of an inch or so, and you thread it on and all the way to the top. Now, watch this. This is important. Take it over the eye of the hook. Take it over the eye and pull the eye and the knot inside the worm, thus protecting your knot. Now my knot's not exposed, so as that slip sinker slides and hits it, I'm not going to nick it. If it hits a limb, a rock, whatever, I'm not going to nick that knot, okay, because it's protected. It's inside the worm. Now what I want to do is I want to take that hook and that I just pulled all the way through the worm, and I want to rotate it. I want to rotate it 180 degrees, okay? So here's how I do it. I'm just going to rotate that worm 100. It's facing that way. Now I'm going to face it that way, okay? Now, next step, very important. I've got it buried in here, so I don't worry about my knot anymore. Now I've got to get this worm to lay straight, because if it lays crooked, it's going to twist my line. I'm just going to have a mess after a couple hours of fishing, okay? So I want this worm to lay perfectly straight. How do I do that? Here's a little tip. no matter what size of hook you're using, it could be a small 1/0 or a giant 5/0, whatever it is, simply go to the bottom of the curve in the hook, take your fingers and pinch right there at that exact point. Now, watch, I'm going to lift the worm up, okay? Of course, it would come off of there, right? I'm going to lift the worm up, and then I'm going to set it right back down on the hook, okay? Watch that again. I'm going to come right to the bend of the hook at the bottom. That's my point of entry. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to enter the worm right at that point with the hook, set it straight down on there so the point of the hook is not exposed at all. It's going right through the middle of the worm. When I do it that way, I now have not only a weedless outfit, but I have a straight worm that won't be twisting my line when I fish it. Hope that helps you. If you haven't fished this rig before, boy, you need to go do that. And if you hook it the Texas rig style, you can throw it just about any place you want, and you can work that through there without getting hung up. Gives you a great chance to catch some big fish. So until next time, thanks.